All right, welcome to BlackMentalHealthMatters.org. My name is Elsa Afework, and I'll be the host of the show today. And today we have a very special guest from Canada, Elsa. Karen, welcome. Today we'll be discussing holistic treatment, wellness, and racial healing in our community with our very special guest. Elsa, welcome. I hope you're doing well today. So just a little bit about you. You are a mental health advocate, which was inspired by the lack of mental health awareness in your home country, which you will be telling us yourself. You're also the founder of this amazing blog called Rethinking Mental Health, which is very essential, especially in deconstructing the concept of mental health itself. And the blog seeks to educate people on mental health and any mental health related issues. You also have a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from the University of Manitoba and are currently working on your Master's in Mental Health and Addictions in Toronto. So a huge welcome, and please tell us a little about yourself, what you do, where you are, and why you do what you do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen. I go by Karen. My full name is Elsa. I'm here today because I was invited to the show, and I'm a huge mental health advocate. I have been in this field for quite some years now. I have experiences working with people with addictions, with youths, also with all kinds of community, especially the minority community, with the Black community. So I'm just here today to share my leading knowledge with everyone.
Awesome. That sounds amazing, actually, especially to specialize in addictions. It's often a topic that is highly marginalized in the Black community. So it's really great to have you. And today we're going to be talking about the topic of, like I said, holistic treatment, wellness, and racial healing in our community, which is, I think, so crucial. This, first of all, is such a positive and enlightening topic, as healing is definitely needed in our community. And as Black communities, we all know we face multiple stressors, including not just racism but discrimination and navigating systems of oppression, which is very historical. So, and all of these affect the mental health and well-being. And when we talk about mental health, I think we often associate it with the struggle, but never the healing aspect of it, the self-care aspect of it. So it's really nice to have you here to discuss that and what we can do to navigate that. Yeah, I'm very excited for this. And as we know, in recent years, I'm sure you're seeing this too. We're seeing this increasing popularity. I don't want to call it a trend, but and doing the whole self-care thing. And I think it's becoming more popularized among everybody, and for various things, I guess for various reasons. And I think it's a great it's great that people are taking care of themselves and thinking about the individual, because self-care is, part of the mental health umbrella. So we'll be discussing that today and how Black communities can benefit from wellness and racial healing going forward. So just with that, I guess the first question is, what is a holistic approach?
Well, thank you for that question. So, holistic approach to me is like several factors like one can take to achieve the highest sense of themselves, to achieve wellness for themselves. All the factors, meaning that when it comes to treatment of mental health issues or problems, we just don't take one approach. That's what it means. It means that we take several approaches to making sure that person is well. What are the several approach? They are spiritual, mentally, physically, you know, maybe financially too. All those things can contribute to someone's mental health wellness. Either in a positive way or in a negative way. So those are the, holistic ways, yeah, that can.
Yeah. I know. I like that you described all the factors we talk about, and the fact that you even highlighted the financial component, which is something that's often ignored, and that's such a quintessential component of self-care, because it can be costly too. And I think it's great. So I guess in your expertise, how can Black communities access holistic treatments?
Very good question. So, how do they assess this holistic treatment? First of all, education. let's talk about education. Our education is all about awareness, promoting mental health, like we are doing right now. We
Right.
want people to be aware that there are services available to them, and also letting them know that they can actually get help when they need help. So definitely awareness, education, educating our community, having someone like a mental health specialist going out there to educate people about mental health issues, letting them know that it's not a stigma, like letting them know that they can always seek help when they need it and they should not isolate themselves.
Hmm.
Secondly, finding a cultural competent provider.
Hmm.
When I mean a cultural competent provider, finding a provider that not just understands to is not just there to help you with the to solve the problem, but also looking at all the factors that could have caused the problems, like the
Right.
causes of the mental health issues, what could have happened in your past. For example, if someone is dealing with some kind of trauma, like what happened in their past,
Hmm.
or how did several factors contributes to that person having a mental health issue. So, like when a way our community can have access to this mental health holistic approach in mental health care
Hmm.
is finding culturally competent providers. They
Yeah.
have to be someone that you trust, someone that understands where you're coming from, understands your culture. Like you can find
Hmm.
someone from your own culture, they understand you. At least when you're having to explain yourself to this therapist, you don't have to do
Hmm.
a lot of work and they don't have to tell you to. They understand you already.
Hmm.
And also working with a trauma informed one is very important. Like someone,
Yeah.
the person is trauma informed, and the person is someone that can also keep your information confidential.
Hmm.
That's also another issue, and that's also why people don't really, or some of our people in our community don't really go seek mental health care
Yeah.
because they fear that their information might not might not be too confidential, especially when
Hmm.
it's which is okay because I know I work in the healthcare field. They talk about like there are certain things you're supposed to reveal if it's a danger,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I saw a case. There was this article I was reading one time on LinkedIn or so, but it was a case of a woman disclosing her mental health um issue to like a provider. I don't know.
Hmm.
I think like the provider is not a bad person, so
Hmm.
she just disclosed it, and all of a sudden, like she said, she had a small baby, and she
Hmm.
has thought about committing suicide.
Hmm.
So because the provider didn't even ask, okay, do you have any support system? Are you married? The provider didn't even bother to ask all those questions, and the provider called the police.
Hmm.
And I think they tried to take the child or something from the home because it's like a danger or safety issue. But then
Hmm.
again, like uh, those kind of things can lead to a lot of distrust. You know,
Right.
it can lead to a lot of distrust. So it's very important for if someone is wanting to assess mental health care is to find a provider that you do trust and that
Hmm.
is culturally competent
Hmm.
to do the work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you highlighted so many significant things. You talked about culture, which is going to be our follow-up question. And you said culturally competent, and I think it's so crucial because Black culture, there's the race culture, and then there's the ethnicity culture. And I come from an ethnic background. You come from an ethnic background. So when we're talking about culture, for us, we're talking about not someone that speaks just English. We want someone that speaks our
Oh,
languages.
absolutely.
Someone.
Yeah.
Exactly. And someone that understands us, because through language, you're able to say a lot of things. You can be able to, the translation is a lot more smoother. And cultural competency also comes with uh, having someone from your background to do the work, to do the healing. And I think
Healing,
it's so important.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's brilliant that you brought that up because cultural competency and like being a proficient in psychiatry or psychology, they're two different things, right?
Two
Because
different things. Yeah.
and so if I know that I am going to seek a treatment for something, I more likely, actually, the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, who's in my community that is specialized to deal with this? And I like the fact that you said competencies because it has to be someone you can trust as well, someone that's a professional, someone that will disclose all that information. And it's really crucial because, like you said, you create that distrust when that knowledge becomes public, because it's not easy talking about mental health issues, let alone let alone seeking treatment for it. And another thing that you said too is actually finding the root of the problem as opposed to, I guess, proper diagnosis. But at the same time, I often see this in a lot of like treatments and wellness facilities. It's like, are you stressed? Oh, here's an herbal healing. Oh, are you distressed? Oh, but it's like, but you should ask the root of the problem. Like, have you been having any changes recently? Or have you been feeling like what is causing this? Because I think finding the proper diagnosis is crucial, and that also creates distress. So I'm so glad you brought those amazing points. And which leads me to the next question, actually. Elsa, what do you think are the cultural barriers that Black communities challenge themselves with in seeking such treatment?
The challenges in
In
seeking
seeking.
treatment. Okay, so many of them. I'll say number one is stigma.
Mm-hmm.
The stigma in the Black community, the fear of being a failure. I don't know, like Black people, when they say you have a mental health issue, people like, especially from my culture, I'm from Nigeria, but
Yeah.
nobody like people, instead of not everybody does that now. Like there's a lot of education, like
Mm-hmm.
more Black people are taking courses in psychology, like especially Nigerians, they're taking courses in so they are more open to like, they're learning empathy for others and things like that. But those days, like when you tell someone, oh, I think I might be struggling mentally, you either get laughed at or you're
Yeah.
just called a failure. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, you're just a failure. Like either you just, or can you just toughen up? Toughen
Yeah.
up. I mean, the actor, you're Black, you're not white. They use those kind of words.
Yeah.
You're a Black girl, you're a Black man. Like toughen up. Like you're not
Yeah.
white. You're coming from hardship. This is like you have other issues. The thing is, and I don't really blame them because they could also have, they could have, you could have a mental health issue you're dealing with, and you could also have other issues you're dealing with. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say, for example, now let's back home in Africa. Let's say if you're from a very poor background, or if you have other like, so for example, someone can have, let's say someone has bipolar, or someone
Mm-hmm.
has schizophrenia, or any kind of medically diagnosed mental health issues,
Right.
and the person is also going through poverty, and the person is from a very poor background, or the person is also from a background where the parents are just, they don't really care about the child's mental health. All they care about is that the child excelling in school, getting a good job, and caring
Mm-hmm.
for them and things like that. When pressure is put on that child doesn't have that, like, because that environment is not there for them to mourn, acknowledge the problem,
Mm-hmm.
their mental health issues. That environment is not there. All they think about is just achieving, overachieving, and achieving, and meeting their parents' expectations, or
Yeah.
just addressing the problem within them. They have never really started to ask themselves if they have a mental health issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the pressure is just so much,
Mm-hmm.
back home. So I think the stigma there, like you don't want people to know that you're a failure. You don't want to open up to anybody. You don't want to get laughed at. Now it's
Right.
better, but like there was a lot of stigma then in terms of
Mm-hmm.
coming out to say you have a mental health problem.
Yeah.
Most parents will not even want to hear that, because they're like, okay, you're a Black person. We don't believe, like, even if you do, you should just toughen it up.
Yeah.
Toughen up, move on, and get things going. That's what they tell you to do. But
Yeah.
at the end of
Yeah.
the day, you end up being bitter, angry, because you've never really addressed the root cause of your problems.
Right.
The problem is still there. It's just suppressed because you're busy doing other things at the moment to get through.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens in Africa. That's what happens in my own country. Though I don't know about other people, but I know a lot of people are going through a lot of mental health issues there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's not being addressed because they have other, I don't know the right word to use, the right English word, but they have other like pre-existing factors
Right.
into them that they have not solved first. Like they have, let's say they could be dealing with
Mm-hmm.
poverty, or they could be dealing with other things that they're still looking to solve, or it could even be the economy. Like the economy
Mm-hmm.
is also a problem,
Mm-hmm.
no jobs, things like that. Like they could be dealing with those kind of issues, and they still have mental health issues, that they have not
Yeah.
been able to solve for themselves. So, stigma in the community is just one of them. Secondly, discrimination.
Right.
um
Right.
when you, like the example I just gave now about the woman, say telling her care provider that she's thinking about committing suicide, and then trying to take her baby away from her. That's like, in a way, it's kind of discriminating though, because I'm thinking, if she wasn't actually black,
Hmm.
would the provider have a little bit of empathy, and
Hmm.
or I don't know, like maybe it's just me thinking, like would the provider have considered that she had a partner who was also competent of taking care of that child before she called,
Hmm.
or you
Hmm.
know what I mean, like,
Right.
but like, because I don't know, discrimination. Black people face a lot of discrimination. You
Of
go tell
course.
a therapist, you don't even know who they're gonna put it. Who they tell your employer about it? Though it's not legal, but like, who's gonna know this information? And
Hmm.
when you come out to say you have a mental health illness, how many people are gonna actually hire you?
Yeah.
You know, as a black person, you're already facing discrimination
Yeah.
applying for jobs on Indeed, on LinkedIn, or on Instagram. Like, you're already facing all kinds of discrimination in the workplace, and now you have a mental illness on top. That's also another one added to the fact that your color
Yeah.
is black. So there's more discrimination coming out and saying I have a mental health problem as a black person than
Hmm.
coming out and saying I have a mental health problem as a white person. The empathy, I don't know, like the fact that nowadays, like I said, our community is trying, but then, or some of our community, like some people will still laugh at you. They'll still call you like, oh, you're a failure, you
Yeah.
know. So like, you're being discriminated against not just by people, or other people that are not from your race. You're also being discriminated by your own black people.
Yeah.
Like, so
Worse.
literally you don't have support. So if you're gonna, how am I gonna assess treatment? How am I gonna come out and start telling people, okay, I need treatment for this, and
Yeah.
I'm also still facing discrimination on top of
Yeah.
that. Those are those are the barriers. Also, another barrier you say is financially. If you don't have the income, if you don't have the, what's it called? If you're not working, how do you even? First of all, like, for you to see, what's it called, a psychologist or something, like, you need to have the, except you want to pay out of your pocket, but not everybody can afford that. So you need to
Right.
have some kind of insurance coverage, and this comes only when you're working, or when you have, some kind of,
Yeah.
it's not paid for by your, I don't know. I live here in Canada. Health card is not covered by the health card.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to be paid for separately. So if you don't have the income, how do you actually do assess this? Or if you don't have the financial, you know,
Hmm.
people are thinking about how to feed in a day. Like, people are thinking about how to pay their bills. People are thinking about all the things, like, mental health. That, it's not like they don't want to pay for their mental health, and that's where I also come from. The what's it, the first point I gave there about trying to treat existing factors.
Right.
Yeah, that's also what it is. So, for example, now, if you don't have the income, or if you don't have the finances, the first thing I'm not thinking about is the first thing I'll be thinking about will not be going to a mental health counselor, because I know I have to
Yeah.
pay out of my pocket. I don't have the money. The first thing I'll be thinking about is how to get food for the whole day,
Right. Survivalist. Yeah.
or it could, or how to pay my rent or my bills. I
Yeah.
those factors first before thinking about my own mental health.
Hmm.
I mean, my mental health is my priority, but then again, if I'm going to treat my mental health, go see a psychologist, and I can't pay the rent for the month, I'm homeless. Like, that's even
Yeah.
worse. How do you expect a homeless person to go start
Yeah.
being a psychologist? So those are the issues here. The income. There's no the finances. Those
Mhm.
are very important. Also, lack of, I think, knowledge, lack of information.
Right.
Some people
Right.
don't know they have mental health issues because they just don't know. Like, it's, the knowledge is not there. Though, maybe they are living in denial too. And this is also coming from the fact that, like I said before, the stigma. They don't want to be
Mhm.
stigmatized again, so they just live in denial that they do not have a mental health problem, and they don't want treatment. So
Yeah.
they don't want to be discriminated against, or they don't just want to be labeled. You know,
Yeah.
it's a lot coming out there, and
It
listening
really
to
is.
this, yeah, it's a lot. it's a lot. Imagine me telling my employer, "Oh, I do need a break from work for a month or so. I need to
Yeah.
do assess." Not all employers do that. Some employers are really understanding, but like most people will like let you go or something. Like you can stay at
Hmm.
work for more than a month for that issue. I don't know, but like they will let you go.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, yeah, that's about it. And also lack of trust. If they don't some people some people just don't want to go access the treatment because maybe they don't trust the providers, or they just don't trust people, or they haven't seen any provider that they trust yet.
Hmm.
That's also
Hmm.
another thing. What if they don't trust these providers? What if I tell these providers about my problems or whatever I'm going through in my head, or like whatever my head, because I could, what if I tell this provider and this provider puts it in the system, and when you're fighting like a legal issue sometime, it comes out in public. You know what I mean?
Right.
What if,
Yeah.
this provider knows my friend's friend, or what if this provider is related to like somebody I know in some ways?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, like it has to be somebody you trust, and that's the truth. Like,
Takes a lot of time, right? Yeah.
yeah, it has to be someone you trust, because not all informations are kept confidential as they always say it is. I mean, it's healthcare. You have to keep, but the people really keep information. I've seen a lot of things in my life working in healthcare. They
Hmm.
really keep people's information in a confidential way. You
Yeah.
know, do they really do? No, some people, yeah, most people that really have the, what's it called, integrity. They love their work. They go by the policies and what they do, but like not everybody does, because
Yeah.
you could be talking about clients with your family, and you don't really realize, or you're actually breaking some code of conduct. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Confidentially.
Hmm.
Oh, I saw. Oh, was she not your friend? Oh, I saw this girl today. Or she's a client of mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just probably, and some of them just probably don't know too, because they're just saying it and they're not thinking that what they're doing is
And
actually
it
breaking
happens. It
code of
happens. You hear
conduct.
about it.
It
Yeah.
happens. It happens, and sometimes even in my own community, it happens.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
see things, and I just, I'm like, okay, it's gonna be so. Those
Yeah.
are the barriers. Lack of trust, not keeping, respecting people's
Yeah.
confidentiality. That also comes with finding a provider that you trust. Maybe
Hmm.
who's finding somebody that they trust, or cultural competent provider that they trust. So
Yeah. Yeah.
barriers.
I mean, it's just that you, like, it hits home to me too in a lot of ways.
Mm,
Like all the points there. I mean, I think if you go backwards, lack of trust, it's so crucial. If I don't trust a person, and I work in a health center, I work in a mental health institution as well. And, even though you do know the code of conduct, is certain things can slip, right? And imagine Black communities, we already have this issue of, especially like if you're, if you're African, this, you're like, I
more
don't
than
want
And it's
this.
a small community. That's the thing. It's anything. Like, literally, imagine me coming out and saying, "Oh, I have a bipolar." I don't have,
Yeah,
like, just imagine me coming to a provider and telling them, "Oh, I think or probably the provider diagnosed me," because you never really know. Like, you have to be diagnosed, right? And
right,
let's say the provider now, just like, let's say the provider, let's say the provider knows my friend's friend, or knows like my auntie's friend. It's like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
America, African, especially when it's African, maybe Black American is different, because they have, this is where they were born, and they are very,
right,
it's big
right.
for them, but it's not big for Africans though. Because I could look into, like, you now, I'm talking to you, you'll never know, I probably know somebody that knows you somehow, but like, let's say it's a
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
friend, and maybe we get talking and realize, okay, I probably know you somehow, but like maybe maybe I know
probably.
your friend's friend or an auntie something. You never know. It's really small. The
It's a lot
African,
smaller. Yeah.
what's it called? Community here is really small.
Hmm.
Really, really small. So
Hmm.
it's not it's not big. It's really small. Anything can happen, and oh, it's a video. Anything can happen, and people will, you know, people will people will know what's going on with you.
Right.
So,
Which is sad because, you're like the fact that you have to think of all these other factors just so that you're trying to get treatment. That in and of itself is already like a mental stressor because, I
Yes.
mean, we think of like, for me, for example, when I see, of course, there's people from like all communities that I see that are Africans, and I kind of empathize almost, especially when they are admitted in a hospital, because I know what they're feeling without even like me being the one diagnosed there to begin with, because when I empathize with them, and it's, you know, not even sympathy, it's more empathy, because I put myself in their position and say, if I was entering here, I'm taking the first step, but oh God knows how, like if my community finds out, I mean, even
I'm
if I see one of
finished.
my community working, yeah, like I'm done, you know, and then people are gonna be talking about me, and it's like, and you're right, African communities, it's so small. Even here, it's really small. Like we know everybody, not even just like within our community. I'm not talking about just like East Africa, where we know everyone.
Everybody.
So, and you meet through institution, or you meet through like, I don't even know how you meet. It is ridiculous how much fear that we have. And you're right. I think Black Americans, or Black British or Black Canadians face a different type of stigma in and of their own, because there's also the Black culture, and then
Yes.
there's
Black
like
culture.
the African Black culture, which is like the culture that we're talking about. And like we're so all about our, like, the you talk about lack of trust. Of course there's going to be lack of trust, even like, because what if the doctor that's going to be diagnosing me, even though he's from like back home, do I really trust him? He may know my mom, he may know my auntie, you know? So it's like, there's a lot of pillars and pillars of like distrust. It's not even lack of trust. I think it's just distrust of trust, to begin with, which actually ties into everything else that you mentioned. You talked about discrimination, which is like absolutely like a barrier. You talked about education, lack of education, and because mental health it didn't even exist as a term up until 3-4 years ago. It used to be like a psychiatry. It used to be called psychiatry, right? Because you're trying to treat the illness of the mind. And like I think hundreds of years ago, it used to be called alienism, just because if you have something that is not a physical diagnosis, you're called an alien, and then the diagnoser is called the alienist, which is really interesting, like the word itself. So imagine bringing that into a cultural context, trying to describe it to someone, to say, you know, I have bipolar, and they're going to be like, and there's also like the spirit of mental health, right? They're going to be like, oh, there's a spirit in you. So there's it's also a culture thing, like the cultural barrier that you mentioned
Our
yourself.
culture. Yeah.
Yeah, because they may not interpret it the way that you're feeling it, so you're not going to get accepted. And I think the one thing we talked about that's so crucial, especially to Black communities in general, is finances. Like you said, if I have money, I'm thinking of putting food on the table, paying the rent, the basic necessities, which is also a struggle in and of its own, and that creates mental health stressors, right? So it almost like you highlighted something inadvertently with that, is that mental health to Black communities, or getting services of access of mental health, is a privilege because it
It's a
doesn't exist.
privilege. It's a privilege, actually.
So, and I used to say that too. I used to be like, oh, this in
It
my community is, you know,
Because yeah, imagine like you have a mental health issue, like it gets worse, like it keeps on getting worse. You can't really like, can you really go to work? You're fighting every day.
yeah,
You know, you probably won't have a job, and then again, you're gonna be struggling financially. You
yeah,
know, you know what
yeah,
I mean. So you probably don't have a job. You're struggling financially. How do you expect to assess the care and pay the provider? You know,
right,
like that's the funniest thing I've ever seen. But like,
yeah,
people don't think about those things. I mean, if it was free, like the way you go to the doctors with your Manitoba health card or like any insurance stuff you have, like then you know you say okay, that's different. But it's
yeah.
not free. You know what
It's
I mean? It's a privilege, like you
it's
said.
expensive. Yeah.
It's expensive and it's a privilege, and
Hmm.
you know, aside even that, the other barriers are finding a provider you trust and someone that
Hmm.
is culturally competent too. Because I can't say I can go to like somebody that doesn't know my community, maybe someone that's not from my because I see some people say they will also prefer to go someone that's not from their own community.
Right. Of
That
course.
confidentiality thing, like you know, people talking around. But then again, if you go to someone that's not from your community, they might not be able to understand that issue properly, or where you're coming from, or the whole trauma you could have faced. You know what I mean? They won't be able to interpret it as much
Hmm.
as just, you know. or going to a white person about racial discrimination or healing from racism you had
Yeah.
at work, or a confrontation with a coworker who was racist towards you. Like,
Yeah.
it was funny because how would I be telling you as a white person, though you're my therapist, but like it just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. I'm sorry.
It doesn't.
It doesn't make sense in a way.
No, and it goes back into the mistrust, right? The lack of trust, like you said. Like for me, honestly, just even looking at like knowing that that person is immigrant, not even like from Black communities, honestly, I already feel a sense of comfort because they know what it's like to be. They might have faced some form of discrimination, or some form of, I guess, that Orientalism, right? It's like I'm from the
Also, the
other.
whole problems of being an immigrant, like having to
Yeah.
settle somewhere you don't understand their culture,
Mhm.
or you don't know how to
Mhm.
relate to the people because you're still, you know, like
Yeah.
it's just like a new world for you,
Right.
like
Right.
yeah, it's yeah.
It's easy to relate, right? And I think that already gives you a sense of peace. And I think like before we recorded, like we started this, I mentioned about how there's like a lot of like even Nigerian community here, and even knowing that, even the school I went to, there's like communities from like all over. There's a cultural week that we do, so there's like a week for like Nigeria, and there's a week for like Congo, there's a week for Ethiopia, and et cetera, et cetera. And we loved it because and you see a sense of like acceptance from other cultures, even like the Canadian culture, and coming in and them wanting to explore the food, the language, and they're almost like it's very foreign to them, right? And I think looking at that exchange and creating a sense of community within that realm at school, it was really nice for me, and it was like a relief to know that, oh my god, I didn't know there was this community, that, and you kind of help each other out because my generation, like our generation, is informed, and that's why like we work in mental health services, and that's why hell we're getting our
Yeah.
masters in mental health and addictions, right? So
But hopefully, I
yeah.
don't have it yet, but hopefully,
Oh, you're
yeah.
already an expert in my mind. It's amazing that we're trying to navigate that and change that, and like you said, rethinking mental health. I can't wait to
Yeah,
check out
it's
that
just
blog.
an idea I thought about. Like it's not like as much in the Black community. I was having a
Mhm.
conversation with a friend one day, and she was like, "Oh, she didn't realize that Black people even go to school to psychology because not even Black, like
Right.
Nigerians, immigrants." So, sorry, I should stop using that word Black. I know I'm Black, but like immigrants, especially, we have a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
pressure. There's a lot of pressure put on us. I don't know if like because I came here to this country when I was 16.
Yeah.
I was still like navigating everything was like, oh my god, I almost fell into depression. It was so
Yeah.
isolating for me. And
Mhm.
like the culture was just so different. Like every single thing, like here it was just totally different from what I was used to
Of
back.
course.
That
Of
was
course.
like a huge shock for me. And the weather too, like coming from the summer to the weather just like
Opposite end.
blew me
Yeah.
away. So it was not the easiest experience,
Yeah.
settling here. It wasn't the
Of
easiest.
course.
It
And like
wasn't
the fact that, like you said, it was even, I like completely agree with you because like I moved here when I was like 13. And so for me, it was like, I mean, not that far from you, but, and the education thing you talked about, how, we're taught to be an engineer, a doctor, or a
yes,
lawyer. Like when
ideally
you think of psychology or they're going to be like, what are you going to do with that?
because
It's
they
not
know
even,
that what are you gonna do with that? Like they'll say,
yeah.
oh, that's so like American, that's so white. Like it's for white
Yeah.
people. Don't do
Yeah.
that. You probably never get a good job in it, or you probably never be able to excel as much in it. Like
Right.
go do law, go do engineering. And if you don't do those things, you feel like a failure because the pressure
Hmm.
to come back home, oh, I need you to be this so you can get income, so you can be financially
Yeah.
independent. They don't believe like if you do all the courses, you can be financially independent.
I
I know the
know.
pressure of you excelling and doing like jobs like medicine, law, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's the
Right.
pressure. I don't know if you also experience that, like from
Of
your own,
course.
or
I
you
mean,
do your own space. So
I went to, so all my siblings, of course, I come from a big family, typical African thing. And, it's already it's already conceptualized in you from a childhood that you're going to go to this school, like, you're going to get this education that's going to get you the job. Because then our parents, I think our like African parents have this mentality of, anything else that doesn't get you a job is really not worth
He's really
going
not
to
what it. Yeah.
right.
They don't
And
want.
yeah, I was in sciences, and I remember I decided to switch, and I was like, I've always been interested in climate change and environmentalism, which is also another thing that's African communities don't even know about, or like are come to terms with it. I guess, like you said, it's people are learning,
A lot
but
of community don't even know about that too.
they don't. I don't even have words to describe it.
About the climate. But I mean, it's funny, but like, yeah, that's true.
Oh,
That's
I trust me. I have struggles in like describing it to our community. So what do you do exactly? And I'm like, how do I describe conservation in like any African language? It's so hard because they're like, and then what are you gonna do? What does it do? So it really is hard, but it's something I've always been interested in, and I think it's because, coming from a place where we learn about sustainability, like saving what you have, preservation, because it's like, the whole over materialism thing doesn't exist here. It's like you can get 5 different colors of the same shirt, whereas back home it's like if you get one, it's like maintain it really well. So I think that like kind of ingrained in me, and here I wanted to pursue that, and like and living this, like, I hate calling it minimalism, but like kind of reconceptualizing my African thinking into climate change in a way of like, let's preserve what we have, let's not overly produce, because we live in a very overly consumptuous
yeah,
world, right?
capitalist society.
Yeah, I mean, the downside of capitalism. So, and it's still a struggle explaining to people in our community to be like, I do this, and it's almost like it stresses me to be like, oh, I just like I can't with you.
Because to
So
them, you feel like they feel like you can't really get a job with it, or you can get a good income.
no, not at all.
And that's where the problem with people don't go see not a lot of people go see psychologists back home because they don't believe it.
Mhm.
They believe it's the white man's, culture, because they believe in other healing
Yes.
processes like family
Yeah.
support, going dancing, doing other things, other like dancing, the community, having like
Yeah. Church
family
is
culture,
spiritualism.
especially spiritual church. Church is like
Right.
there for my own country, Nigeria.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, church. If you're a Christian, you have to be in church. You have to pray to God. God can heal
Yeah.
you. It's just over. Religion is just put over like common
It
things.
plays a crucial part in a lot of African countries, and same with my culture as well. And I think, which is also a holistic treatment itself,
Also
right?
itself in the holistic treatment. Yeah, you get
Yeah,
Christian counselors. Yeah.
yeah, and it's ingrained in like the traditional aspect, which actually leads me to I guess, the next question of, are there traditional methods? Church is also traditional method. So, of well-being that you think is like is termed in a Western way, but it really is like a traditional method to like the Black person that is beneficial to Black communities. Like, I'm saying this because you work in mental health services, and there's like spiritual care now that is accessible to people, but
Yeah.
really for us it's more like considered traditional, it's not institutionalized. So what are some other traditional methods that you know of that are reconceptualized in the Western way, but they're really traditional, in the African sense? They're more like a day-to-day way of holistic treatment.
Like the things we've always been doing, or people have always been doing. Like I think, oh, I don't know. From nowadays, people are like now here people are just looking at spiritual care, like putting in religion into it. But yeah, back home, people have always been. I think communities like one big factor, like
Mm-hmm.
from your community, like your family. You
Mm-hmm.
have that family values and things like that from our own
Yeah.
culture. Like your family's there, like giving you that emotional support.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're talking to you, you have friends,
Mm-hmm.
you visit people. Like here, here in Canada, the culture is very all about like myself, one person.
Yeah.
Back home, if anything is happening to you, it's everybody's
Mm-hmm.
problem. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So like, you have neighbors come to check on you daily. You have like
Right.
community support there.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I would say the traditional ways. I don't know, like I can compare it to here. Like if I'm back home, I'll probably get a different, like for people going through mental health issues, they'll probably get a different
Mhm.
treatment. Like the community is there for them. They have
Right,
community
right,
support. They also
right.
have like they can go to church. The church
Yeah.
system. They can go to church if they're Christians, or if they're
Mhm.
Muslim, they can go to the mosque.
Right.
They can do all the practices like dancing, our African dance.
Yeah, music is a big part of spiritual healing. Yeah,
Those are also parts of things that I know that Africans, or even Black people in general, they love
yeah, yeah.
dancing. Acting, you know,
Hmm.
going out in the natural environment, walking with your foot, your bare foot. I don't know if you did that as a child, but like just
No, of
climbing,
course.
but going out in the nature and just walking around and
Yeah,
that
things we
also
didn't know are
can,
spiritually good for us, but
yeah, it can
we
have an impact on your mood, like
right, right.
just
And
walking. I think it's called hiking here, though I don't know, but going
yeah, that's what I
like
mean, right? That's
yeah,
exactly what you're saying. There, it's just a day to day, whereas here it's labeled differently.
it's
Even when
labeled
you
differently.
said
Yeah,
community, I keep thinking holistic. Isn't holistic supposed to be communal? Like it's because we talk about community a lot in African
yeah.
culture and even in the Black culture. So yeah, I think communal is really it's crucial, which actually leads me to the next question. So, is there a preference? Because I think we're getting to a point where we're talking about communal a lot because us, even like where I come from, we talk about community more than we do the self. And then, self-care, because we're talking about the topic of self-care and well-being. And then we have holistic in the same sentence. Um, is self and community care is one better than the other for Black communities, and can you tell us like what self means versus what community means to the Black person?
That is a very good question. Self care, like honestly speaking, I think, like I said before, Black people, we are all more of community. We're not just
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah.
So when that community is taken from us,
Hmm.
it's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard because
Yeah.
we are just used to everybody as a team.
Right.
We're
Right.
together. But like, it's not like here in Canada or in America where you're just on your own. So like, community is just definitely community over self. That's the thing. That's
Yeah.
the first thing when it comes to Africans. Community, the community you support. Family, community is your family, people you're talking to, your friends. Those
Absolutely.
kind of people can, talking over it with a friend, talking over it with a family member that understands you.
Hmm.
Yeah. Other self-care practices is also important. Yeah. Self-care, like watching, your diet, even
Hmm.
some African food to eat too. Like you talked about, yeah, African. We have like natural herbs
Hmm.
you put in your diet that can help you.
Right. Right.
Some African food you eat that can
Hmm.
really, like help with your
Like
system.
herbs and things
Herbs
like
and things
that
like
that are part of our
that.
food. Yeah.
So, then you also have like cultural stuffs like dancing, also like things that could make you beautiful, like cultural things like bead wearing and
Right.
what's it
Right.
called? There's something that with painting, body painting. Like there's
Yeah.
certain things that we do in our culture, that makes us, those type of things can also help, individual with their own self care. Like that's
Yeah.
for us, anyways. So
Yeah. That's true. We're like we've caught up. We've been doing that for centuries.
and also singing,
Hmm.
singing, listening to music, listening to your own kind of music, your own,
Right.
whatever you love to listen to. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that you described them both so well, Eseosa, just because when you talk about community, of course, like community is more preferred. I think it's because what happens when you don't have quote unquote institutions like mental health care services, you go to your community, and a lot of people feel better. I know in my culture, like I feel a lot better knowing that there's like a communal way of healing as opposed to an individual. But when he talked about self, he talked about a lot of essential things like the body paint. There's actually like a place here where they call it art therapy or something, but they created it, and it of course is created by like a non Black person, and it's like, oh, painting is so therapeutic, it is so good for you. And I'm like, well, culturally we do that anyways as the
Do
form
that,
of like,
just
yeah. And he talked about music, which is an integral part of every African culture. Like by just listening to like one song, I could already tell what country that it's from. And it kind of, even though it's not my own, it kind of resonates with me that it's like, oh, that's from my people, you know. It kind of gives you that sense of nostalgia in a good way.
yeah, of being
Yeah,
home,
being home, yeah. Even if it's like when I listen to Nigerian music, I'm like, oh yeah, my people's music. It's just because you're away from home, right? So and it's so important. He talked about even like you taking care of yourself through food, and food is a huge part of Black culture and Black African culture. So and when we eat well and we love our food, there's variations that come with it, and every herbs and spices that we put. And I'm pretty sure like our moms would say, oh, eat this because it's good for you. You don't need to know like what's in it. It's just and you believe it, so you're
yes.
happy to eat it, you know. And I think it's so important. But it's also like it's almost like, and when we're talking about it, it's almost like there's a disconnect between the Western concept of self-care and then the African or the Black way of saying self-care. Because
Yeah.
it, you know, for me as someone, and for both of us as people who grew up here, the latter part of our life, we understand self-care from the Western concept.
Western
But
concept, yeah. That's
from
true.
the back home concept, it's like that's my day to day though. It's I don't need why would I need to reconceptualize it? And
Exactly. That's my day-to-day routine.
yeah, that's my thing. Like, what are you talking about, you know? So I think like as we know, like I said, within Black community, self-care has you know, it comes again, like I said, there's an issue with the concept itself, which leads me to the next question. We know that self-care in and of itself has this deep political and social justice roots that like we talked about affordability, that people can't afford and so that so like these political and social roots cannot be ignored simply just because like I said, we know what self-care means to us. That doesn't mean we have the means to an end to access it here. So there's that disconnect there. So in your opinion, how can Black communities break you know, social or political barriers, if there are any, to lead to healing? And what can they do as an individual to to break these barriers of self-care?
I think one thing is, I don't know, like as a thing, how can they do it by themselves? Because sometimes,
Mhm.
like well, things that they can do to make themselves happy, I already stated. But like
Right,
then again, like assessing those, maybe you want to go see a psychologist or something, therapist.
right.
Um, they will need, like, I don't know. But what if they can afford it? That's the thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
See, they can afford it. It's not really something that they can control, right?
Yeah,
So, like
yeah,
whatever they can, I think whatever is within their control, whatever they can control, they should
yeah,
do it to make themselves happy momentarily before other things are being addressed.
yeah.
Some things can just be about them. Some things can be only addressed by the government. Some things can be
Hmm.
addressed, like external factors, But like
Yeah.
what they can do to make themselves happy at that time is just like I said, dancing,
Hmm.
family, getting to talk to other people, connect with your family. Some of them might have strained relationship with their families. It's also
Hmm.
difficult. It's also
Of course.
like music, whatever whatever that person actually enjoys, the person can actually do,
Hmm.
at the meantime before they get help or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's very crucial. Is Black communities are the most resilient human beings, I think, just because on top of these social struggles, political, that are embedded in discrimination or racism, whatever we face, we still prevail. We
That's
still
true.
persevere.
Yeah. Well, black immigrants, especially.
Mm. Yes, yes,
Yeah, because
yeah,
sometimes you might not have family. Like, did you come here with your family? Like when you
yeah.
came?
I came with my family. Yeah. How about you?
No, I came with my brother.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, it was different. But yeah,
yeah. Oh, yeah,
going
yeah.
through a lot of issues like mental
Mhm.
health. Let's say you don't even have that family relationship. Like
Yeah.
community is not there. Like just imagine how bad it could be. It could get.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I do have friends that came, by themselves, or, like I was fortunate enough, thankfully, to come with my mom and dad. And so, like, of course, I went through what you went through in terms of like, having these depressed feeling. The weather has a huge factor too. I mean,
The
I'm from
weather.
the east, of like where the equator, sun every day, all day, to like,
That's also another thing too. The
yeah.
weather back home, it's also
Mhm.
influenced in mental health.
Absolutely. That vitamin D is essential. And I tell people, like,
Stress, they
take
call it
care of yourself. Yeah, yeah.
stress
And
or something like that. When
yeah,
it comes, because it gets really dark, and not only that, people are not outside. You don't have anybody to talk to.
yeah,
Hello, hi, nobody like.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like it's
Which
not
brings like
friendly.
a big, like brings in like a big
Oh,
sadness.
when
So
you
what
go
I
to
think,
the store, I never even talking about in the community. It's true. Like
yeah.
when I go out in my country, I go to the store, I see people smile at me and have conversations, long conversations,
Yes,
make
yes.
friends like very quickly.
Yeah. And that's
Like
why you don't return home soon, because you're just
no,
there socializing.
like you go to the market and you're like talking to a lot of people there. Like it helps your mental health. But like here, everybody just minds their business. Like
Yeah.
they just do, give you your personal space.
Hmm.
They give you your personal space. All they just say is
Yeah.
hi, hello, and that's it. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to, except maybe you find someone from the same African background and you guys have some chat.
Right.
But then again, they don't really have the time because they're working either two jobs.
Yeah.
it's not easy being a black person, black immigrant.
No, a black immigrant.
Like
That's
the jobs you also have to if you're working like I said,
mhm.
it's all boils down to income. You don't have enough income, so you're probably working two jobs, two low paying
Yeah.
jobs. You don't have time for your family. Your mental health is in disarray. All these kind of
Hmm.
factors, influence, the our black community too.
Of course, of
Imagine
course.
working two jobs, you don't have time for your family.
You don't have time to breathe, let alone, yeah. I mean, it's
You don't have time for your community too. You don't have
at
some
all.
back home. I could go visit my friends. After
Yeah,
you have a regular 9 to 5 job, you're done. You go see your friends.
yeah.
Because you have people to talk to you, and people are always available because you're not overworking like they do
Hmm.
overwork here.
Yeah.
Even if you realize that people work here more than they work back home.
Yeah, we're more stressed because when I
More
go there,
stress. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, did you realize that too? Like, I don't know.
yeah,
You're an immigrant, but
it
yeah,
is,
you work more here. Like you work a lot here.
which
You
is
know,
crazy because, like, there you work less, but you still meet your day to
you
day.
still meet your day-to-day bills. At least your own
Yeah,
you're not paying any mortgage, so you don't
yeah,
own home, and like you have time for your family. There's this happiness. There's this love. You know what I mean?
right,
Like
right.
someone working two jobs, they are also facing racial discriminations in their two jobs. Having
Yeah,
they come back home, what time would they have to kiss their wives and oh honey, have their kids come hug them? Facing a
yeah,
lot of stress.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? It's too much.
It's yeah, like I said, that's why we're resilient. And it's just, I love that you said, black people and black immigrants, because they're two different, very different things.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that we understand, at least to us, and like what that means is, like, I always say, like, as an African immigrant, or I say, because there's a difference between African American and African in America, right? So same thing goes for Canada. So when people say, "Are you African Canadian?" I'm like, "No, I'm African in Canada." So it's like,
Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, and because they're different. I love that you said Black immigrants because
Yeah,
Black
but
immigrants
the way
face
exactly is different. And I realize people don't really term that
they
because
don't. Yeah,
whole other thing. We'll probably talk about that in a different. I just thought about that now. We'll probably
yeah,
talk about that when maybe in upcoming shows. But I realized that when they also they term black people. Well, we are all blacks, and I love my brothers and sisters. Like I
of
love.
course. Yeah, we are at the end of the
But
day.
again, like I feel like if they term everybody black, like black Canadians,
Right,
that in a way
right.
can be a bit discriminatory. Do you know that?
Of course, of
Because
course.
how would you compare me? I'm not a black American. A black American have or a black Canadian have a different culture from me as a black
Mm-hmm.
immigrant, a Nigerian.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand the kind of issues, how what about my upbringing? You know, like the same way
Yeah,
a black Canadian was brought up is not the same way a black immigrant or
absolutely.
African immigrant were brought up. The schooling they went, the school system they had gone
Mm-hmm.
through, kind of pressures they have faced back home. It's gonna be different. They're gonna be two different people. They always
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh, are you black or are you this? Are you the same way?"
Yeah, the box,
Are
right?
you this? Are you I feel like black people they just group all of us in one category, which is not fair. I mean,
Which is not fair.
it's
Yeah,
not fair because they don't have, when they're asking for like other, they just group everybody African black as one. But then again,
right.
in a way, we're still different. You
We're
know,
still different. Yeah,
we're still
I
different.
thought of
That's
the like the Afro Caribbean countries too.
yeah,
They're very different, and they feel strongly about being called, just like black because we don't consider. It's not that we don't consider. Of course, we're black at the end of the day, but we have like an ethnic. I think there's that overlap we talked about between like race and ethnicity, right? Which is a crucial role because you talked about cultural communal barriers, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Is if you're not going to understand my culture, why am I going to go to you for wellness services? Or I'd rather go to community, and that's why we're more community oriented. People, Black immigrants are more community oriented, and I can't speak for Black Americans or Black Canadians or Black Europeans because I don't like I can't. It's something I try to understand, but
release. Yeah,
I think in general, like Black culture itself, that includes race, ethnicity, and like everybody, I think there's a sense of community
yeah.
in general, which I love seeing
Because of
every.
our whole history of slavery and colonization
Right,
and
right.
all the, it's understandable. There is
Mhm.
definitely that community for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there's this. I think the struggle is what
struggles.
binds you, and which is in a way it's bittersweet, right? Because it's like, oh, that's my brother. He understands the struggle, and like immediately there's a bond there that is it can't be described by anything.
You can't
Um,
be, yeah.
no, not at all. And I think, okay, so I guess the last question, I mean, we can go at this all day. This is such a great topic, and you're bringing up so many quintessential points. So let's discuss forms and the concept. So, what does self care look like for Black people? And I ask this because the general term of self care in the Western concept is centralized around improving the self and restoring balance within the self itself. So, what's missing is the self care disclosure uh, and the necessity of it to marginalized communities, the concept itself, what it means for marginalized communities such as Black people. So how can I guess Black communities? I guess the first question, like I said, is what does self care look like, and what should it look like for Black communities?
So, what does self care look like for Black communities, and what it shouldn't look like?
What it should look like exactly?
What it should look like. Well, I think self care is different from everybody, though. In as much as the Black community, but everyone has different things that actually make them
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a different routine, but generally, um, Black people we tend to like self care to us is being being able to achieve our goals, like
Mm-hmm.
our especially from an immigrant's perspective.
Right.
Self care is achieving those little milestones we want to achieve, like being should I say success? Yeah, being
Yeah.
successful in our own way is self
Right.
care. You know, it makes us happy. Like if you're being successful, that's the
Hmm.
story. Yeah, being successful in our own way is is our self care.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very endearing the way you said it. It's very goal oriented to Black people.
Oriented. Yeah.
Like if I have, like we said earlier, if I have food on my table, I'm happy. Even though it's not, I guess, conceptualized in a way of like, it is self care. It really is self care. You're watching out for what you're about to eat, and because if like we said earlier, it's associated with, I guess, accessing self care is socioeconomical, right? If I don't have the means to an end to, and you said earlier, if I don't have enough funding to put food on my table, how am I going to access a psychiatrist? Or if I see a psychiatrist, I'm going to starve, or I'm not going to have um, shelter to sleep on. So, how can, I guess my last question, I think, from your expertise as a as a mental health educator, what can okay, so there's two parts to this story, like to this question. One is to the Black community, and two is to the Black migrants. So how can they, you know, break the barriers and say, you know what, I need treatment, a holistic treatment, because there are holistic treatments available. So what can they do to break the barriers to say, I need help, therefore I'm going to go to this person to access this treatment?
I don't know. Like I don't know. Like they can start. I think searching
Mhm.
for like a cultural competent provider, like I said before. Like
Mhm.
they can start looking for someone that they trust. Finding
Right.
someone that you trust, like you can access different services. If you talk to someone, if you don't like the service, you can always just continue. So like
Right.
just getting to know, like getting more like referrals or something from people to get like, okay, this
Mhm.
person provides services. Let me just look her up.
Yeah.
Getting referrals from people to access those services to see like if you're going to be compatible, like if you like their service and you can continue with them or not, or like doing your own research
Right.
about
Right.
what kind of care you want. Yeah,
It's important. I think that also
yeah. I
creates
don't
a
know.
trust.
Your question, but maybe
No, no, I think you answered it well. You
yeah,
creating a trust, like you have to trust
yeah,
in people, and I think, like we said, a lot of the stigma has to do with trust as well. Of course, in addition to the other barriers as well, like discrimination, lack of access, lack of education. Um, but I think it is very important. So, on that note, where can people find you if they want to say, I want to read about this amazing blog, and I have questions, I want to access services? Where can they find Eseosa?
oh, referrals. Yeah, I can give you tons of referrals.
Yeah.
What's it called? I have an Instagram page. It's called Rethinking Mental Health,
Okay,
and if you
amazing.
just type it in, it's gonna pop up. It's a blue logo on
Okay,
the profile picture. So yeah.
awesome. And your blog as well? Is there a link to that, or
I think if you go on my Instagram profile, you should be able to click on. There's a profile info there. You should be able
oh,
to
like a link tree? Okay.
yeah, click on it.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm definitely going to check it out. I'm so excited. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. It's weird, even though we met today, I just felt like I already know you. And it's really a testament to, where you come from and what you're achieving. It's incredible that you're studying mental health. It's not, like we said, it's not something that is a norm to study in African culture. So it's really great. And thank you so much. And of course, we're going to have you in future shows. I'm so excited. So thank you for joining us today, Siosa.
No problem. Thank you for listening to me. You my little advice and my little contribution. So it was so nice speaking to you. You're such a nice and also person.
Yeah, likewise as well. All right. Bye for now.
Okay, take care. Bye.